The Invitation to Cana. Hey friends, tonight we walk the soft roads of Galilee, where dust clings to sandals and the sun kisses olive branches in a gentle hush. You're traveling with him, Jesus of Nazareth, and the air feels lighter, as if even the breeze leans in to listen. The journey has no urgency, no tension, just laughter from those ahead and the rhythmic shuffle of feet on stone. You glance toward him. His face is calm, aglow with the same peace that seems to cover the landscape like morning dew. A wedding awaits in Cana, a humble village nestled in soft hills. You don't know the bride or the groom, but it doesn't matter. The invitation came through Mary, his mother, and Jesus said, "Let's go." So you followed. If you thought miracles were always loud and dramatic, think again. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. I'd love to know. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The town rises gently before you. Modest homes with stone walls, draped fabric fluttering at the windows, and bursts of jasmine in full bloom. Laughter spills from a courtyard. A wedding is in full swing. You pass under an archway strung with olive branches and clay lanterns, the scent of wine and roasted herbs drifting past. Music hums low, inviting. Children dart past your legs, chasing each other with olive leaves in their hair. You feel the ground settle beneath you as you step into the celebration. No one stops to ask who you are. There is always room at a Galilean wedding. Jesus walks in quietly, not drawing attention. He smiles, not in ceremony, but in true delight. You notice Mary already speaking with someone, a neighbor perhaps, her expression open, welcoming. Her eyes sparkle with the joy of watching others rejoice. The feast is simple but full. Baskets of figs and dates, clay platters of warm flatbread, lamb sweetened with honey and garlic. You taste, you savor. And more than that, you watch. Jesus doesn't speak much. He sits among the guests, listens to stories, nods gently. A child tugs at his sleeve. He leans in with the full attention of someone to whom every moment matters. Somehow, the joy feels deeper near him. You notice the laughter grows softer but more true. The music doesn't rush but sways, like a lullaby. And then, a murmur. It's faint. Two women exchange a glance. A man with worried eyes steps into the back. A servant rushes past you. You wouldn't have noticed if you weren't watching closely. But Mary notices, always. She crosses the courtyard toward Jesus, her sandals brushing against crushed petals. She bends to whisper something into his ear. You can't hear her words, not clearly, but you see his face. There is no alarm, no frown, just a quiet stillness. A pause that holds something sacred. Jesus looks up. The sky is starting to turn gold with the weight of late afternoon. A dove alights on the edge of the rooftop. The music slows, just slightly. You are near, close enough to catch the faint crease of his brow. He speaks, only a few words, and not with sharpness, but thought, as if weighing something old, something vast, But something Mary, beyond smiling this as small if she village. already knows the answer, turns away. She walks toward the household servants, nodding, gesturing gently toward the stone jars resting by the wall. And Jesus stands, brushing crumbs from his robe. You feel the air thicken, not with tension, but expectation, like the pause between a breath drawn and a breath released. The courtyard glows with golden light. The laughter picks up again. Someone starts a new song on the flute. And yet, right beneath all of it, something is shifting, something unseen. You don't fully understand what's happening. But then again, maybe that's the point. What would you have done standing there? Would you have noticed the moment the wine ran out? Would you have leaned in or looked away? You stay close, because something is beginning, not with a shout, but a whisper.
The
And
gentle
you're
rhythm
right
of
here
celebration.
The music carries you back into the hum of the courtyard, simple drums, flutes, and laughter dancing between stone walls. You glance at the faces around you. They glow with the kind of joy that comes not from wealth or spectacle, but from togetherness. Women pour oil over steaming bread, children nap under shaded cloth, and old friends sip wine beneath the fig trees, their words flowing slow and sweet like honey. You stay near Jesus. He hasn't said much since Mary spoke with him, but something has shifted in the way he moves, no longer simply a guest, but a presence that draws your attention without asking for it. You sit on the ground beside him, knees brushing warm stone. His eyes are on the scene, watching the dancers, the clinking of cups, the quiet footsteps of the servants carrying full jugs to waiting tables. It feels like nothing is wrong. It feels like everything is perfect. But you remember the whisper from earlier. They have no more wine. You recall how softly Mary said it, not with panic or urgency, as if she were pointing out a flower beginning to wilt or a candle nearing its end. Something tender, something worth noticing. The wedding itself rolls on in rhythm. There is no announcement, no disturbance, just the natural course of things, quietly approaching a need. And maybe that's why it's so beautiful, because the miracle doesn't come to correct chaos. It comes to protect joy. Jesus watches, not passively, but with intention, as though he is seeing more than you can. His gaze lingers, not just on people, but through them, into their hearts. You wonder what he sees. Regret? Gratitude? A longing to be known? He turns slightly and looks at the servants. They're standing by the edge of the feast, next to 6 large stone jars, each one nearly as tall as your shoulder. You hadn't noticed them before, tucked behind a curtain of flowering vines. You wonder, how long have they been there, waiting? The jars were used for ceremonial washing, purification before a sacred meal. And now, they stand empty. Not by accident, you sense, but as if they were waiting for this moment too. Jesus walks toward them, and you follow, careful not to disturb the feast around you. The air here is cooler, more shaded. A breeze moves through the vines, carrying the scent of jasmine and crushed thyme. He speaks to the servants, not loudly, not with command, but with clarity. Simple words, like pebbles placed gently into still water. Fill the jars with water.
Look at one another.
That's all.
No question is asked aloud. They just move. You trail beside them to the well at the back of the house. You hear the creak of rope, the splash of buckets lowered, the grunt of effort as water is drawn, poured, lifted again. There is nothing fast about this process. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe miracles begin in the quiet work, one bucket at a time. You take a turn carrying a jug. It's heavy in your arms, and the water sloshes, soaking your sleeve. Yet somehow, this ordinary task feels sacred. The sun catches droplets on the rim, turning them into prisms of light. No one claps, no music plays for the filling of jars. And yet something in you feels the moment stretching open, like heaven leaning a little closer. When the final jar is full, the servants stand back. Their shoulders are damp with effort. You breathe in the silence between them. Water sits still and clear, catching a reflection of the courtyard lights. Jesus says one more thing. Now, draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. Again, no explanation, no spectacle, just trust. A servant nods and dips a ladle. You watch his hands tremble slightly. You feel your own breath catch. What will it be? Water? Wine? Both? Neither? The ladle lifts, the cup is carried, and the moment stretches like twilight, neither day nor night, suspended in wonder. You do not rush after them. Instead, you stay by the jars. You place your hand on one, the stone is cool. The water inside, now still, hums with a kind of promise. You don't need to see it. Something has changed. Something unseen, but real. And isn't that how faith often works? You feel the beat of the celebration continuing in the distance. The music hasn't missed a note. No one cries out in amazement yet. But your heart knows. And you wonder, what else in your life is slowly being transformed, even now, without you seeing? What if the miracle is already in motion? You close your eyes and rest your hand on the stone a moment longer, just to remember what it felt like before it all became something new.
The courtyard glows deeper now, bathed in the warm amber of evening lamps. The celebration hums on, mellowed by time and wine, and the air itself seems softer, as if the stars have come closer, listening. You return to the table where Jesus was sitting earlier. His place is empty for the moment, but you lower yourself beside it anyway, watching from a distance as the servant carries the filled cup to the master of the feast. It happens quietly. The steward, a man who spent years tasting and testing, managing food and drink with the precision of one who's seen many weddings, takes the cup without question. He brings it to his lips, as he always does, expecting the ordinary. And then he stops. You can't hear his words, not yet, but his face says more than enough. He pauses, blinks, lifts the cup again. He swirls it slightly, tilts his head, then drinks a second time, this time slower, more deliberate. A whisper begins, not from him, but from the table nearby. You lean closer. He's rising to his feet, motioning to the groom with a curious, almost playful smile. What was once routine is now wonder. He places a hand on the groom's shoulder, leans in with a friendly laugh, and says words you catch only in fragments. Most people serve the best wine first, but you saved it for now? The groom blinks, clearly confused. He didn't ask for this. He didn't plan it. He doesn't know how it happened. But his eyes widen as he lifts the cup for himself and sips, first with caution, then with joy. You watch his shoulders relax. His laughter comes easy. Around him, the energy shifts. It's subtle, but you feel it. Not loud, not extravagant, but gentle. Like gentle dew, gathers on petals before anyone sees it form. Like the way bread rises slowly in silence. Like grace. You glance toward Jesus, now seated again in the shade of the fig tree. He says nothing. He doesn't even look toward the groom or the steward. He breaks a piece of bread from a plate beside him and offers a piece to a child seated near his feet. There is no announcement, no declaration, no thunder. But you feel it. The miracle didn't arrive with a roar. It arrived with a whisper. And maybe that's how love works. You think of Mary, her soft voice earlier. They have no more wine. Not demanding, not desperate, just aware. Like a mother who notices things others don't. Like someone who knows where joy is thinning before it fades. You remember Jesus' reply, calm and almost distant, as if the moment wasn't yet ready. But then again, time bends around him, and readiness in his presence is more than a matter of schedule. You wonder, what if miracles aren't about fixing disasters? What if they're about filling the quiet gaps before they become wounds? What if grace looks like noticing the need before the emptiness shows? The music picks up again, more lively now, a sweet rhythm spreading from table to table. The guests, still unaware of what truly happened, simply raise their cups, smiling, laughing, toasting. "This is wonderful wine," someone says.
"Where did it come from?" asks another. But no one
Only the
truly
servants.
knows.
Only
Not
Mary. And you. And Jesus? He says nothing. He simply lets the moment be what it is. Not a performance, but a gift. You place your hands gently on the table's edge and breathe in the stillness beneath the celebration. The night smells of baked bread, pressed olives, and now rich wine. The kind of wine that shouldn't exist yet. The kind of joy that arrives not because it must, but because it can. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the voices, to the wind, to the silence beneath it all. And you feel it again, the invitation. Not to do anything, not to explain anything, just to notice and to wonder. What would you have done sitting there? Would you have asked questions or simply tasted and believed? You open your eyes again and look toward the edge of the feast, where the servants are gathered. One of them catches your gaze. He doesn't speak. He only lifts his hand in a gentle wave. You nod, because you both know. It wasn't about the wine. It was about the whisper, and the one who always hears it first.
You stay seated as the music gently folds itself into the night. The stars blink softly above, not in fanfare, but in rhythm, like the slow, sacred pulse of something eternal. Conversations continue around you, warm and content, but your attention drifts back to that earlier moment when Jesus replied to his mother. You heard the words, or at least you heard something, but more than that, you felt the pause between them. She said, "They have no more wine." And then there was a moment, a stillness, a pause that said more than any sentence could. You close your eyes and remember the tone, not cold, not dismissive, just quiet, thoughtful, as if Jesus were listening to something no one else could hear. Not his mother's voice, but a deeper current, a deeper timing. You remember his words now, not with judgment, but with a sort of gentle distance. What does this have to do with me? It wasn't a refusal. It was a space, a breath, a question of timing maybe, of alignment, of sacred readiness. And then Mary's soft turning away, not in defeat, but in assurance. Her trust didn't rest in the words he said, but in the heart behind them. She didn't argue. She simply looked to the servants and said, "Do whatever he tells you." That's what stays with you now. Not just what was said, but what lived between the words. Isn't it true that sometimes we live in the quiet between questions and answers? You know those moments. The ones where you've asked something in prayer, and the silence lingers. Not as a no, but as a pause. A sacred stillness that asks you to wait
Toward Jesus,
with
who is
trust.
seated again now, speaking to a small group of children. One girl sits cross-legged at his feet, her hands cupped like she's catching sunlight. He's telling her something about birds, how they don't store food, how they always find what they need. His voice is low, slow, almost musical. You watch him speak and realize something. He never rushes. Even when he knows the outcome, even when he carries power that could command the stars, he waits. He listens. He honors the moment. You think back to the jars, empty not long ago, filled with water, then filled with something far richer. The transformation didn't come with spectacle. It came in the quiet, in that space between Mary's trust and Jesus' response. How often do we miss the miracle because we expect it to come with noise? But here, under the fig trees and hanging lanterns, you realize some of the holiest things arrive without words. They come in the look exchanged between mother and son, in the willing hands of tired servants, in the breath between not yet and now. You shift slightly, feeling the smoothness of the table beneath your palm. Someone passes you a small fig,
fresh and warm from the sun. You bite into it slowly. Sweetness spills across your tongue. You weren't hungry before, but now you realize how much you'd been waiting for something like this. A simple gift, unasked for, perfectly timed. You look around again, taking in the room. Everyone seems softer, as if the wine that flowed had more than just flavor. It had presence. It carried peace, restoration, a subtle joy that sings without a sound. You remember how Mary's eyes looked after she turned from Jesus. Not disappointed, not pleading, but knowing. Like she trusted the heart of her son more than the moment she could see. And maybe that's what faith really looks like. Not always believing that things will change in the way you ask, but trusting that when they do, it will be more than you expected. You rest your elbows on the table and breathe out slowly, releasing any tension you didn't even realize you were holding. The night is full now. Crickets hum just outside the courtyard walls. A lantern flickers near the gate. Stillness has returned. Not emptiness, not silence, but stillness. That holy, gentle space where something new is quietly forming. You stay there, just resting in it, just noticing. What would you have done, sitting beside him? Would you have needed more words? Or would the pause have been enough?
Await. You turn your gaze toward the edge of the courtyard where the servants gather. Their eyes linger on the 6 stone jars, now full. They stand with the quiet posture of those who know they've been drawn into something beyond their understanding, but who obeyed anyway. No fanfare, no lightning, just water, poured one jug at a time. And now they wait. You walk toward them slowly. The cool stone beneath your sandals, the scent of grapes and herbs thick in the evening air. The noise of the celebration still hums behind you, but here, by the jars, it feels like stepping into a different world, one that is quieter, watching, ready. The servants' faces say everything. Some glance at each other with furrowed brows. Others look down, rubbing their hands on their tunics, uncertain of what to do next. Their task is complete, but the meaning of it? Still unclear. You study the jars. Tall, wide-mouthed, carved from pale limestone. Sturdy, simple. The kind of vessels that don't ask to be noticed. Their purpose was always about cleansing, ritual, repetition, tradition. Yet now something waits inside them that defies expectation. Still water? Or something new? One of the younger servants, barely older than a boy, steps closer to Jesus. You watch him hesitate, then bow his head respectfully. Jesus meets his eyes. There's no speech, no instruction, just a look. Calm, assuring. "Draw some out," Jesus says gently, "and take it to the master of the feast." The servant nods and turns toward the nearest jar. His hand trembles slightly as he lifts the ladle, as if the weight of what he's doing is just starting to dawn on him. The others watch, silent. You hold your breath. And for a moment, just a moment, the world narrows to that single act, drawing from the jar, bringing it forward. The others don't stop him. They don't intervene. They simply wait, like you, their eyes following every movement. No one speaks, not even Jesus. It is in this stillness that something becomes clear. The miracle is not in the act alone, but in the faith to act at all. The servants don't know what's changed. They have no guarantee. Only water was poured. No thunder announced its transformation. But still, they follow the instruction. And maybe that's why they were chosen. Not because they understood, but because they were
giving
willing.
space as the servant carries the cup across the courtyard. His steps are careful. The courtyard crowd is still unaware, lost in conversation, music, and the softness of shared joy. But here, just outside the circle, you feel something stirring. What must it feel like to carry something you don't understand, to offer it to someone with no explanation, and to believe that somehow this is enough. You think of all the jars in your own life, empty places, cold stone spaces, moments that seemed ordinary, even forgotten. And yet, what if they were waiting too? You look again at Jesus. His eyes are not on the jar, or the servant, or the cup. He watches the sky now, as if feeling the shift of night falling gently on the earth. A breeze brushes his robe. He is at peace. Because the miracle has already begun, even if no one has seen it yet. You feel something loosen in your chest, something unspoken, as if all the waiting you've carried has been heard. Not fixed, not rushed, but held. And that is enough. You turn your gaze back to the servants. They remain still, not frozen, but present. They've done what was asked. They've waited. And now they trust. You wonder, would you have? Would you have filled the jars with no explanation? Carried the water with no promise? Held the cup out with no proof? You're not sure. But you hope so. Because sometimes the miracle isn't in the result. It's in the obedience, the quiet yes, the humble hands. You linger there a little longer, near the jars. Their surfaces glow softly in the lantern light, as if something within is now more than liquid. You brush your fingers along the cool rim of one, feeling the echo of stillness inside. It's not loud, it's not fast, but something sacred waits here.
Water
and
poured
now,
in faith.
so do you.
The servant has disappeared into the courtyard, carrying the ladle's contents with the care of someone holding a story not yet told. You stay by the jars, still, present, letting the moment unfold like a petal opening without hurry. One of the older servants kneels by a jar and wipes a bead of moisture from its stone rim. You watch as another adjusts the base of a lantern so its light glows gently across the water's surface. None of them speak. They just wait. It's hard to explain why this feels so holy. After all, there's no thunder, no voice from heaven, no shouts of awe. Only stillness. And 6 stone jars filled to the brim. You step closer to one and peer inside. The surface reflects the flickering lamplight. You dip your fingers into the water, expecting something, anything, but the sensation is unchanged. It is cool, ordinary, still water. And yet, you feel different. It's not the water that's changed. It's the meaning behind it, the obedience that poured it, the quiet faith that carried it. You look up at the other servants. Their faces are calm now, eyes soft, no longer waiting for proof. Just being here feels like participation in something divine. You walk back to the well where they first drew the water. The rope still dangles loosely over the lip, wet and frayed with age. You run your hand down the side of the wooden bucket, feel the grooves worn from years of service. And it hits you how many small acts of faith this moment holds. It wasn't the miracle alone that made this moment sacred. It was all the steps that came before it. Every tug of the rope, every footstep carrying a heavy jug, every jar filled with the plain and ordinary before becoming something more. You sit by the well for a moment and let that sink in. How many miracles in life begin with nothing more than water and willingness? You think of the times in your own journey when you poured yourself out, unsure if anything would change. When you followed a nudge in your spirit without knowing the outcome. When you did the right thing quietly, anonymously. This moment is for that. This miracle sound
is
draws
you.
your attention. The distant clink of a cup, a low murmur of surprise. And though you don't move just yet, you know something has shifted at the far end of the courtyard. But you stay by the well. Not because you doubt, but because you trust. The story is already unfolding, and you were part of it before it became known.
You look again at the jars, still standing tall, still silent, vessels that held water, then something more. And you think about your own life. What if you, too, are a vessel? Not always filled with brilliance or clarity, but available, willing, capable of being used, not because you're perfect, but because you are present. A breeze drifts through the courtyard, lifting the edge of your robe. You hear faint music again, distant laughter. The celebration continues, unaware of the fullness flowing through every moment. That's the thing about some miracles. They arrive before they are noticed. They work in the background. They ask nothing of the spotlight. And in doing so, they change everything. You close your eyes and remember the faces of the servants, their silent nods, their careful hands, the way they obeyed, not for credit, not for attention, but because someone asked and they said yes. What would you have done? Would you have thought it too small, too strange, too slow? Or would you have leaned into the quiet, lifted the jug, and poured the water anyway? You rise slowly and walk back to the jars. The stone is warm now from the day's sun. One of the servants has placed a hand over the mouth of one, as if listening to what it holds. No one says the word miracle. Not yet. But deep down, you know.
A transformation
It's already
unseen.
begun.
You walk once more to the edge of the courtyard, the stone cool beneath your feet now as the night settles deeper around you. The lamps flicker, casting gentle shadows on the walls, and somewhere nearby, a flute begins again, soft, slow, like a lullaby whispered from the stars. Still, no one has cried out in astonishment. No crowd has gathered. No voice has proclaimed what's happened. And yet, the transformation is already complete. The wine has been tasted. The steward has praised it. The groom has smiled. But no one knows the source. Not really. Except for a few quiet hearts. And maybe that's the miracle's greatest grace. It doesn't need to be seen to be real. You glance again at the jars, standing silent. They haven't moved. They haven't shone with heavenly light. There was no sparkle when the change came. No ripples, no burst of warmth. Just water becoming wine. Without spectacle. Without demand. Without needing anyone to notice. You step closer and run your fingers along the side of one jar. Smooth, cool stone. It offers no sign of what it carries now, just as you, too, carry moments inside you that the world cannot see. The miracle was not in the loudness, but in the hiddenness, in the faithfulness of Jesus, in the quiet trust of Mary, in the hands of the servants, and in the still, steady pulse of divine timing. You look out over the tables. Guests continue to drink, to laugh, to eat. They savor the richness of the wine, better than any that came before it. But they do not know where it came from. They simply receive it with joy. You wonder what it's like to taste a miracle and not know it. How many times has grace come to you like that? Unnoticed in the moment, only to be remembered later as a sweetness that didn't have a name at the time. You breathe in the warm night air, filled with the mingled scent of figs, spices, and the deep red of wine, now flowing freely from jar to table. No one asks why it tastes so vibrant, so full of life. They just enjoy it. You
Jesus
smile
has returned to
because
his
that's
place beneath
enough.
the fig tree. He watches, content, hands resting loosely in his lap. He does not explain. He does not interrupt. He simply lets the joy unfold. And somehow, his stillness is louder than any speech could be. You sit nearby, feeling the hush that surrounds him. Not emptiness, not distance, but fullness. Like a cup so perfectly poured, nothing spills, and yet it brims. He glances toward you, just for a moment, and in that single glance, you feel something unspoken pass between you. Yes, the miracle happened. Yes, it was real. And no, it didn't need applause to matter.
You think back to the jars again, just stone, just water, and yet chosen. It humbles you, because maybe you've been looking for transformation in lightning and fire, when all along it's been happening in the background, in the slow healing of your heart, in the courage to forgive, in the strength to take one more step when the way is quiet and unseen. That's what this wine is. It's not just drink, it's a symbol of that quiet transformation, a symbol of how God meets the ordinary and makes it holy. And you wonder, how many miracles in your own life have come this way? Softly, silently, completely. You close your eyes and lean back against the stone wall. The music is soft again. The guests are content. The jars are still full. The miracle has happened, and almost no one knows. But you do, and so does he.
You watch from a shaded corner as the steward raises the cup once more. The firelight dances in the wine, catching on the rim of the clay vessel and painting it gold. His brow furrows, not in displeasure, but in deep contemplation. He swirls the wine, smells it again, then takes another sip. And this time, he smiles. Not a smile of amusement, not politeness, something deeper. A smile of discovery, of delight, of unexpected grace. You can feel his mind working. Years of experience as a host, a connoisseur, a careful planner of these joyful feasts, all telling him this should be impossible. The wine he holds is unlike the first batch. It's richer, fuller, alive in a way that good wine sometimes is, but rarely to this degree. He looks around, as if trying to catch someone's eye, someone to explain it to. But of course, no one comes forward, because no one told him. He doesn't know about the jars. He doesn't know about the water. He doesn't know about the quiet transformation just behind the veil of the feast. And that's what makes this moment beautiful. Because he responds not with analysis, but with wonder. He walks to the groom, holding the cup with reverence now, like something precious. The music softens slightly, as if the room senses the shift. You lean in, just close enough to hear his words. "Most hosts serve the best wine first," he says with a chuckle. "Then, after everyone has had plenty, they bring out the lesser kind. But you've saved the best for now." The groom blinks. His mouth opens slightly, searching for a reply. But he doesn't have one, because he doesn't know either. And that, too, is part of the miracle. It came without asking, without expecting. It was given.
The groom laugh,
Freely. A little nervously, a little confused, and nod his thanks. He lifts his own cup and sips. The same surprise flickers across his face, then calm, then joy. He doesn't understand how or why. He just knows it is good, and that is enough. You find yourself smiling, not because the wine was praised, but because you witnessed something rare, a miracle delivered without the need for credit, without the need for recognition. Only presence, only love. The music resumes, slightly more vibrant now, as if it too has tasted something better. Guests begin to toast. You see them raising their cups, savoring the deep red, speaking of its sweetness, its depth, its warmth. But no one looks toward Jesus. No one suspects. You glance at him again, seated now with a few children resting beside him, their heads on his lap, lulled by the music and the wine and the warmth of the hour. He says nothing. He smiles faintly as he strokes the child's hair. And suddenly you realize, it was never about proving power. It was always about preserving joy. The wine didn't need to exist, but the celebration needed to continue. The laughter, the dancing, the sense of being gathered and whole. And Jesus, he didn't need to be seen. He just needed to make sure love didn't run out. You think about how often your own joy feels like it's drying up, how the wine runs low in the celebrations of your life, moments when you're tired, when connection feels thin, when hope feels just out of reach. And then you remember this. Sometimes, without even knowing, someone has noticed your empty jar. And somewhere, quietly, water is already being poured. Maybe that's how grace works. Not always in answers, but in wine you didn't ask for, in a cup offered unexpectedly, in sweetness where you expected scarcity. You take a breath, slow and deep. The air is still warm, touched by night now. A lantern flickers beside you. The cup in your hand is full. And though no one says the word, you know this isn't just wine. This is joy returned. This is love renewed. This is the miracle tasted,
surprise.
not explained.
The groom stands a little straighter now, the cup still in his hand. His lips are parted in a smile that doesn't quite know where to land, somewhere between amazement and bewilderment. He casts a glance at his new bride across the courtyard, where she laughs with her friends, unaware of the praise he's just received. The steward walks away, still murmuring to himself, shaking his head as if the taste still lingers on his tongue, defying logic. The groom looks down at the wine again. You watch as he takes another sip, slower this time, as if trying to commit the flavor to memory. You move closer, close enough to see the shimmer of candlelight reflecting in the deep red liquid. It glows like garnet, and for a fleeting moment you wonder what it looked like the very instant it changed. Not that it matters. The miracle wasn't in the spectacle, it was in the grace. The groom sets the cup down gently on the table, still watching the guests with a kind of stunned joy. He didn't ask for a miracle, he didn't even know he needed one. And yet, there it is. You take in the full scene now. The bride dancing, her veil catching in the breeze. The mother of the groom dabbing her eyes with the corner of her sleeve. Children sneaking olives from platters, giggling behind cupped hands. And wine, flowing again, full and abundant. No one announces what happened. No one points to the jars or the man who sits silently by the edge of the feast, watching with peace in his eyes. Because this miracle wasn't about being seen. It was about being spared. Spared from embarrassment. Spared from shame. Spared from a moment that could have quietly fractured something joyful. You feel the truth of it settle deep in your chest. Sometimes the greatest mercy is not in grand rescues, but in quiet preventions. In troubles that never quite arrived, because grace moved first. You glance at Jesus again. He isn't looking at the groom. He's feeding a small piece of fig to a child, who smiles, sleepy-eyed and soft. His presence isn't loud, it's protective, gentle, fatherly. The groom, unaware of who made the wine, simply lifts his cup again and joins the dance floor, folding his hands around his bride as the music swells. He whispers something in her ear that makes her smile widen. You smile too, because you know. Their wedding was saved by a miracle they may never understand. And that's the kind of miracle you long for, one that doesn't demand credit, only brings joy. How many times has that happened in your own life? When something held together, when joy wasn't cut short, when shame didn't come, and you never even knew who to thank. You sit on a low bench near the vine-covered wall, watching the glow from the torches flicker on the stone path. A servant passes you a cup, and this time you take it. It tastes rich, warming, like sunlight stored in fruit, like something ancient and kind. And it's more than just wine. It's a reminder that sometimes when you are unaware, He is still working, still pouring, still protecting what you didn't even know was at Feet
risk.
tapping in rhythm, clapping beginning on the far side of the courtyard. The groom spins his bride with care, his earlier concern already forgotten.
There's no tension in his brow now, only light, only joy. You close your eyes for a moment and simply listen to the laughter, to the tambourines, to the joy that flows without interruption. You remember the jars. You remember the ladle. You remember the servant's quiet obedience, and the space where water became wine without anyone watching. What would you have done, standing in the groom's place? Would you have questioned the praise? Tried to explain away the mystery? Or would you, like him, simply smile and let joy take your hand?
The feast carries on, golden and glowing. Laughter ripples through the night air like wind through tall grass, subtle, graceful, full of life. The music loops into a gentler melody now, soothing the children who've begun curling up near their mother's laps. The servants, once on edge, now stand more relaxed, some swaying quietly to the rhythm, their earlier task behind them but still echoing in their thoughts. You sit beneath an olive tree at the edge of the courtyard. From here, the scene unfolds like a painted scroll. Soft torchlight, dancing shadows, the low thrum of conversation. It's all so unremarkable, and yet you feel something shifting under the surface. The steward has said his piece. The wine has been poured again and again. And now, something else is happening. Not dramatic, not sudden, but unmistakable. A quiet murmur, like a shared breath. You notice it first in a pair of older guests sitting near the hearth. One leans to the other, speaking low, eyes flicking to his cup and then to the crowd. A shrug, a small shake of the head, but then a smile, a knowing one. Then another, near the fig platter. A woman tilts her head curiously as she tastes the wine. She nods, slowly. And though she says nothing, her eyes soften. You begin to hear the whispers scattered like seeds in the breeze. Did you taste this? It's better than before. I wonder who brought it. It's not loud, it's not public, but something is rising. Not the miracle itself, no one's calling it that, not yet, but the awe that follows in its wake. The recognition that something beautiful has happened, and no one quite knows how. You watch as two of the servants pass each other, exchanging the smallest glance. They say nothing, but you can see it in their faces. They know. And they hold that knowledge tenderly, like a candle cupped in the palm. Protected, precious. You close your eyes and take a deep breath. This is the afterglow of grace. Not the moment itself, but its echoes. A subtle spreading of warmth, like dye dropped into water. At first, barely visible, and then, all at once, everything has changed. It reminds you of those moments in your own life where something unexplainably worked out, where a burden lightened without warning, where provision arrived before the panic, where sorrow gave way to peace, and you couldn't say how or when. But you knew. You knew it wasn't coincidence. You knew it had been cared for, even if quietly, even if invisibly, even if no one else knew. You rise from your seat and walk toward the center of the celebration. The groom spins his bride again, her feet barely brushing the stones. Music swells for just a moment, full of wind and string and joy. The crowd claps in rhythm, and a few guests link hands in a small circle. They laugh, heads tossed back, cheeks glowing in firelight. And you realize something. This miracle wasn't just for the groom. It wasn't just for the steward. It wasn't even just for the servants. It was for everyone, whether they noticed or not. That's the generosity of Jesus. He didn't wait to be thanked. He didn't limit the wine to those who understood. He let it flow for all, even those who never knew a miracle occurred. You turn slightly and see Mary watching,
her face soft, her hands folded in her lap. She sits beneath the same olive tree where you stood earlier. Her eyes move from guest to guest, glowing, not with pride, but peace. Because she knew he would respond. And he did. She saw the need, she spoke it gently, and trusted that love would move. You wonder if she too sees the murmur now, this gentle ripple of awe spreading from table to table like evening light. You wonder if she hears what you hear, the soft gasp of wonder, not yet named. And you wonder, how often has God moved on your behalf, without your noticing? How many times has joy been restored to you, without the story ever being told? You walk once more past the jars. Their surfaces are shadowed now, the night growing cooler. They're still, uncelebrated, and yet
Mother's
they
knowing
held the
smile.
miracle.
She sits alone now, Mary, on a stone bench beneath the canopy of vines, her hands resting gently in her lap. There's a softness about her, something beyond composure. It is the peace of someone who sees further than others do, who understands things not through noise, but through quiet knowing. You watch her from across the courtyard. The celebration swirls around her, laughter, dancing, music, clinking cups. But Mary seems untouched by the motion, not distant, not removed, just anchored. You walk slowly toward her, drawn by the stillness she holds. As you approach, she turns her face slightly toward you, offering a smile so small and so full of meaning that it settles something inside you. She says nothing. She doesn't have to, because her smile carries 1,000 stories. You sit beside her, and together you look out over the wedding. The groom is glowing, his bride radiant with joy. The steward now moves easily between tables, pouring another round of the wine he still cannot explain. Servants carry platters of bread and honey-dipped fruit. The night feels weightless. Mary watches them all, eyes soft, gaze steady. You can't help yourself. Quietly, you ask her, "You knew he would do it, didn't you?" She doesn't answer at first. She just breathes, slowly. Then she says, "He listens, always, but he does things in his time, not mine." You nod, absorbing the words. There's no pride in her voice, no hint of superiority, just love, deep-rooted love, like the love that waits, not for results, but for purpose. She continues, "I didn't ask him to change the water. I only told him there was no wine. I trusted that if he responded, it would be right." Her eyes never leave the celebration. And in that moment, you understand something profound. Her faith wasn't in what he would do. It was in who he was. She didn't need details. She didn't ask for signs. She just made space for him, for his timing, for whatever form grace would take. You sit back against the vine-covered wall, letting the scent of blossoms drift around you. The air is cool now, laced with the softness of night. Mary adjusts her shawl, her hands moving slowly, deliberately, like someone accustomed to waiting well. You think about the times in your life when you've brought your need before heaven, when your voice, perhaps small and trembling, whispered something like, "I've run out of strength, out of hope, out of direction." And you wonder, what if the answer wasn't delay?
The stillness
What if
was
it
not
was timing?
absence, but preparation? What if grace was already being poured, unseen, like water filling jars behind the scenes? Mary leans forward slightly, resting her elbows on her knees. Her eyes glisten just a little as she watches the guests. "He doesn't need crowds," she says quietly. "He doesn't need noise. He just needs an opening." You let her words settle in the quiet between you. An opening. Not a demand. Not a deadline. Just a space in the heart where trust lives. You glance again at Jesus. He's near the far side of the courtyard now, speaking with an elder. His posture is easy, his presence warm. You realize he never once pointed to himself tonight, never drew attention, never stepped into the center. And yet every part of the celebration bears his touch. Mary follows your gaze. "This is how he begins," she murmurs. You look at her. "Begins?" She nods, slowly. "It won't be the last. There will be many signs, some big, some quiet, like this. But all of them will carry the same heart." You close your eyes, letting the thought rest in you. The same heart. One that sees need before it's spoken. One that moves without demanding credit. One that preserves joy, quietly, reverently, fully. A moment passes between you and Mary, quiet and full. The kind that doesn't need to be filled with words. And then she smiles again. That small, knowing smile. The kind of smile a mother gives when she sees not just what her child has done, but who he is becoming. And you feel something in your chest loosen, a breath, a weight, a long-held wonder. Because you're beginning to see
afterward.
it too.
The celebration begins to slow, though joy still lingers like warm light on the stones. Candles burn lower in their clay holders. The music, once lively, now drifts like a lullaby, threading its way around quiet conversations and tired laughter. The guests begin to part, murmuring blessings and farewells. Lanterns are carried through darkened alleyways, and the scent of crushed thyme clings to the night. Somewhere, a child falls asleep in her father's arms. And you, without needing a word, find yourself walking beside him. Jesus. He steps lightly, the hem of his robe brushing against pebbles and dry grass. His posture is relaxed, hands loosely folded behind his back. He says nothing at first, and neither do you. The silence is comfortable, like old friends walking familiar paths. The moon hangs low, silvering the hills beyond Cana. A soft wind moves through the trees, ruffling olive branches and cooling your skin. You walk this road in peace, not because you understand everything, but because you feel safe here. He glances at you once, and in that look is something immeasurable, gentleness, welcome, knowing. You want to speak, maybe to thank him, or to ask him how he did it, but no words form. And that's all right. The quiet speaks enough. Eventually, he asks, "Did you enjoy the feast?" His voice is low and unhurried, like water over smooth stones. You nod, smiling. "Very much." He nods, eyes forward again, the corners of his mouth lifting just slightly. "Weddings are sacred things," he says, "not just for the couple, but for the village, for everyone who comes. Joy is meant to be shared." You think of the groom, the bride, the way they glowed with laughter. "They didn't even know what happened," you say softly. He smiles again, this time a little more visible. "They didn't need to." The path turns gently, the stone houses behind you now. The land opens out toward quiet fields. In the distance, a shepherd's lantern flickers near a sleeping flock. You take a breath, feeling the night settle into your bones. "Why did you do it?" you ask. "Why start this way?" He doesn't answer right away. Instead, he crouches near a cluster of wildflowers growing between the rocks. He touches a bloom with 2 fingers, careful not to disturb it. "I begin with joy," he says, "because it's what people forget they're allowed to keep," he says, finally. His words settle into the stillness between you. You hadn't thought of that, not in those terms. But it's true. You think of all the things that try to steal joy: fear, pride, duty, weariness. And yet, tonight, none of those held space. Only celebration, only peace. You walk a little further. He speaks again, softer now. "People will remember the wine, but the real gift was that no one had to be ashamed." You think of the groom's wide smile, the steward's praise, the crowd's ease, all because of a miracle that wasn't announced, a miracle that slipped in through a whisper,
and stayed long enough to fill every cup. You realize how much of life happens in moments just like that. Small, invisible graces. Needs met before they became burdens. Doors opened before you realized you were at the threshold. He looks at you again, eyes steady. Do you see now? You nod slowly. Yes, you whisper.
The miracle wasn't just about the transformation of water. It was the protection of joy, the covering of dignity, the quiet presence of love. You think of the servants, the jars, the gentle obedience that preceded the wonder. You think of Mary, her trust, her knowing smile. You think of the night air now, carrying this story like incense, rising, fragrant, real. And most of all, you think of him, Jesus, not only powerful, not only holy, but tender, willing to step into a small village feast to make sure joy wasn't lost, not for applause, not for recognition, but because that's what love does. The road stretches on, the stars overhead whispering ancient songs. He walks beside you still, not rushing, not guiding, just with you. And that, somehow, is the greatest miracle of all.
You continue walking beside him, your steps quiet on the moonlit path. The village lies behind you now, and before you, only fields and the soft hush of crickets singing into the night. It would be easy to mistake this moment for ordinary, just two travelers walking home after a feast. And yet, everything feels changed. Not because the sky shifted, not because people shouted, but because something holy happened, quietly. You glance over at Jesus. He's looking at the sky, not lost in thought, but deeply present. The kind of presence that makes the moment feel full, weighty, alive. You noticed, he says, without turning. It's not a question. You nod. Yes. There's a pause. Then he smiles. Most people miss the sacred when it's wrapped in small things. You think of the jars again. Just water. Just servants. Just a whisper from a mother to her son. And yet, tucked within that chain of simple acts, was glory. How did it happen? You ask, your voice barely louder than a breeze. He breathes in, slow and steady. It was never about how, he replies. It was always about why. You feel those words settle deep in your spirit. You'd been watching for a miracle, like one watches for fire from heaven. But what you'd received was something quieter and maybe more profound. An answer to a need no one saw forming. A solution no one could claim. A joy preserved before it was even missed. You walk a little longer in silence. The stars above are brilliant tonight, scattered like 1,000 soft promises. A field of olive trees lines the edge of the road, their silvery leaves rustling gently in the breeze. He speaks again. People think holiness lives in temples and thunder, he says, but it lives here too. In cups filled, in burdens lifted before they spill, in laughter that continues because no one had to be embarrassed. You exhale slowly, the weight of that truth sinking in. Maybe the sacred isn't always what breaks the sky open. Maybe it's what keeps the sky soft.
Walking for a moment
and sit at the edge of a low stone wall. Jesus joins you, his robe brushing against the stone. The silence stretches, comfortable, full. You think back through the evening, through every moment that felt small at the time, the glance between mother and son, the quiet obedience of the servants, the weight of each bucket carried without knowing what it would become. None of it looked like a miracle in the moment, and yet you were part of one. He watches you quietly, patient, and when you finally speak, your voice is low. I didn't expect to feel so changed. He nods. Because it didn't just happen around you, he says. It happened in you. You sit with that. Let it rest. Let it reshape the way you understand what's worth noticing. You look down at your hands, remembering how they felt on the stone jar. Cool, solid, real. You remember the ladle, the water, the stillness. What if you had dismissed it? What if you had walked away before the wine was tasted? How many times in your life have you missed what was sacred because it looked too small? The wind picks up slightly. A fig drops from a nearby branch and lands softly in the grass. Jesus watches you. "What is it that you think I came to do?" he asks, gently. You search for the answer. "To save," you say, after a moment. He nods. "Yes, but not just from death." You look at him. "To save joy, to protect dignity, to teach people how to see again, to remind them that heaven often arrives like a whisper." He leans forward slightly, placing his elbows on his knees. "That's why I began with wine," he says. "Not with healing, not with thunder, not with spectacle, but with something sacred and small." You take another breath, letting that truth fill you. Joy is worth saving. Laughter is worth preserving. Small things matter to him. You rise slowly, and so does he. The path stretches on, but now it doesn't feel so long, because something in you has shifted. You don't need signs in the sky.
The next
You
morning,
just
you
need
return to the
open
place
eyes.
where it all happened, not out of curiosity, but reverence. The sun is just beginning to rise, casting long golden streaks across the courtyard stones. Everything is quiet now. The celebration is over. Tables have been cleared. The air holds the sweet traces of fruit and wine, and something less tangible, like blessing. And there they are, the jars, still standing by the wall, as silent and still as they were the day before. You approach slowly. No crowd surrounds them now, no servants busy nearby, just you and the memory of what they held. 6 stone vessels, unadorned, plain, meant for washing, created for ritual. But last night, they were something more. They carried a miracle. You place your hand on one of them again, just as you did before. It feels the same, smooth, cool, weighty. But you are not the same. You know what it held, and what it became. You lean closer and peer inside. There is no wine left, just the faintest residue at the base, and even that seems sacred. You sit beside the jars, letting the sun warm your back. The memory plays in your mind, not as a flash, but as a gentle unfolding. The filling, the waiting, the serving, the tasting, the joy. And you think to yourself, what once was empty was filled. What once was ordinary became holy, not because of what it was made of, but because of what it was willing to hold. You rest your hands in your lap and stare at the jars. You begin to wonder, what parts of your life feel like those vessels? Heavy with purpose, yet unused, sitting quietly in the background, waiting. What parts of you have been waiting to be filled? What spaces in you feel too ordinary, too forgotten, too functional to hold something sacred? And then you remember how Jesus looked at them, not with pity, not with doubt, just with readiness. He didn't ask the jars to be different. He didn't require beauty or fame or grandeur. He simply asked for them to be available. And they were. And because of that, they became part of the first miracle. You run your fingers along the rim again, this time gently, as though touching something ancient. Because in a way, you are. You're touching the story that taught you this. You don't have to be perfect to be used. You don't have to be important to be seen. You just have to be present and willing. The sun climbs higher. A bird sings from the fig tree in the courtyard. You rise slowly, your body still, but your heart awake. You step back and take one final look at the jars. They'll likely be returned to their usual purpose, used for washing, for ritual, for routine. And yet, you'll never see them the same way again, because you know what they held. And more than that, you know what they became.
They remind you of yourself, of every quiet act of faith, every unnoticed offering, every moment you showed up, even when it didn't feel like enough. You walk to the edge of the courtyard, one last glance over your shoulder. You whisper, "Thank you," not for the wine, but for the reminder that something simple can still hold the sacred, that water can still become joy, and that miracles often begin in the places you
The
least
first
expect
sign,
and
quietly
never
given.
forget.
You leave the courtyard slowly, your steps quieter now. The warmth of the rising sun wraps around you like a soft shawl. The village of Cana begins to stir, shop doors opening, animals waking, bread being shaped in early morning kitchens. Life continues as if nothing remarkable happened. And yet, you know something did. You pass others in the village. They smile, nod in greeting, unaware of the hidden glory they brushed shoulders with just hours ago. They speak of the wedding, the music, the laughter, the good wine. That last part, everyone mentions it. But no one knows how it came to be. No one knows that it was a sign, the first sign, not in storm or spectacle, but in a joy quietly preserved. You walk with that knowledge held gently in your heart, not like a secret to be hoarded, but a seed, planted, waiting to bloom in you, again and again. And you remember his face, Jesus, still and luminous beneath the fig tree, not triumphant, not seeking praise, simply there, present, like the miracle itself. You replay his words in your mind. I begin with joy, because it's what people forget they're allowed to keep. And you realize that's what this miracle was, a beginning, not of power, but of invitation. An invitation to see the sacred in the small, to welcome joy, not as luxury, but as part of God's first gesture. You let your fingers trace the bark of a passing tree as you walk. Every texture now feels like memory. Even the path beneath your feet seems changed, not because it's different, but because you are. He began here, not in the temple, not in the courtrooms of rulers, not even on a mountaintop, but at a wedding, in a village, with laughter, with jars, with wine. You close your eyes for a moment and breathe in deeply. The scent of rosemary from a nearby garden, the low call of a rooster, the thrum of life waking up around you. And under all of it, the story stays with you, a whisper in your spirit. Joy is worth preserving. Needs are worth noticing. And the first sign was meant for your heart, too. You begin to wonder what other signs are unfolding around you even now. Quiet acts of provision, protection you never see, small gifts placed in your path to restore wonder, restore warmth, restore you. Not everything holy comes wrapped in lightning. Sometimes it comes in silence, in sweetness, in stillness. You look ahead on the path. The road continues. Jesus is somewhere further now, walking, listening, teaching. But you know this much. He sees, he notices, he answers before the shame arrives. And you remember again. The water was poured by servants. The wine was tasted by many. The miracle was claimed by no one. And yet, it reached everyone. You rest your hand over your chest, over your own heart, and let the truth settle once more. You are seen. You are loved. And yes, joy is for you too. Now and again, as you walk, you think back to the jars, those heavy, humble vessels that stood in the shadows, unnoticed, until one moment changed everything. You smile to yourself, because maybe you too are a jar, ordinary, waiting, willing.
And maybe, just maybe, something holy is already being poured into you right now, even in this
And
moment,
now, as the
even
last of
in
the
this
story
breath.
fades into stillness, you sit quietly in the afterglow. No more footsteps, no more laughter, just breath, just peace. You've walked dusty roads, you've tasted quiet wonder. You've sat beside jars and learned that sacredness lives even in the smallest moments. You were there when water became wine, not with applause or spectacle, but with reverence. Let that stay with you. Let the memory of the whisper linger longer than the memory of the wine. Not every miracle will ask your attention. Some will arrive in silence, in the background, to hold you before you ever knew you were falling. Tonight, as you rest, you are reminded. You don't need to be important to be chosen. You don't need to be extraordinary to carry something holy. Like the stone jars, you are more than what you seem. And like the quiet at Cana, the love that holds you needs no permission to move. It already has. So breathe slowly now. Let your jaw soften, your shoulders loosen. Let your eyes drift closed. You are safe. You are seen. You are deeply loved. And somewhere, always, joy is being preserved just for you. The wine has been poured. The story has been shared. The miracle is complete. Now rest in it. Let it hold you like the hush between two soft notes of music, like the hush before sleep. You don't have to understand everything. You only need to be still. And let the one who began in Cana continue in you. Sweet dreams.